Welcome to the selfgrowth.com show. My name is David Rickland, and I'm the founder of selfgrowth.com. Today, we'll be discussing the number one secret for creating inner peace and abundant prosperity. To provide us insight into this secret, I'm excited to interview Tim Shurr. Make sure to listen closely. We're going to be sharing a lot of information today. Before we get started, I want to take a couple of minutes and share some information about Tim. Tim's been researching and reprogramming human software with beliefs, communication habits for 3 decades. His mesmerizing mindset secrets are so effective, he's been featured on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, TEDx, and in hundreds of radio programs and news articles. He's also authored 4 books, including Get Out of Your Way, The Power of Optimism, Losing Weight Without Losing Your Mind, and Sales Mastery. Tim is an award-winning leadership and influential communication keynote speaker who discovered the secrets to programming your brain for inner peace and prosperity through facilitating, get this number, over 15,000 individual hypnosis sessions over the last 25 years. Tim, welcome to our show.
Thank you, David. It's an honor to be with you today.
All right, let's jump right in. I know, as I mentioned earlier, you've helped tens of thousands of people achieve their biggest goals over the last 25 years. What have you learned from working with all these people?
Well, the biggest secret is understanding the beliefs that are driving your behavior. You know, a lot of times there's an old phrase that says, when you learn to go within, you never go without. And a lot of times looking at our beliefs and what's driving us at that unconscious level is the last place we go. We think to achieve our goals that we got to hire the right coach. We got to have a better sales program. We've got to have a better marketing strategy. And we're not looking at our own beliefs. And often it's the beliefs that are either thrusting us forward towards inner peace and prosperity, or it's what's holding us back. So if you ever feel stuck, there's almost always a belief that's there. And after facilitating all of these sessions, people are coming to me for everything. They wanted to lose weight or stop smoking or stop drinking or get off drugs, or they wanted to improve their marriage, or they want to get over a fear of flying or break a bad habit, or they wanted to grow their business. It really didn't matter what they came in for. I would try to figure out what the beliefs were that were driving them. And the biggest fear that I found over and over that people have is that I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. And because of that, I won't be loved. And so we develop what Brene Brown calls emotional armor, these stress responses that cause us to chase success instead of attract it to us. And if you have this belief that you're not worthy or you're not enough, then you won't charge what you're worth. You won't lean in when you need to. Right. You won't show up and be relentless. And so the key to inner peace and prosperity is upgrading your mindset and getting rid of any limiting BS belief systems that are holding you back.
All right, I get that. And it's been clear for me for many years, beliefs are a critical component of who we are, what we think of ourselves, what actions we're going to take. It ties into everything. And I absolutely get this concept of a belief a lot of people have that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, whatever it is. And I see it varying, depends on what they're doing. So sometimes it's not good enough for a particular relationship, or not good enough for a particular job, or not good enough, whatever it is that they're trying to get in life. So I get that. And people have blocks, and I know we're going to be getting into a lot more detail about what you can do about that. Because what's interesting, what I find interesting is some people might have that perception in one particular area of their life, and they might be good in another area. And it's a matter of really understanding where those blocks are and where the beliefs are and what they're impacting. So I get all that completely. So
yeah, you bring up a good point. A lot of times people feel very confident in their professional life, right, but their personal relationships are a bit of a train wreck.
Yes.
Right? Or they feel really close with their partner, but they can't make any money because they have these fears. And so it's just interesting how clever it is, the ways that we find to hold ourselves back.
Yes.
Human beings are beautiful at trying to avoid pain by doing things that create more pain. And that's what we call self-sabotage.
Yeah, I get it. Many people are masters of that.
Yes.
That skill. They're very good at that. Unfortunately, that particular skill doesn't really help you in terms of making progress or breakthroughs in your life.
Yes, unless you sabotage yourself on procrastinating, then you can use it to your advantage, right? So if you have the ability to hold yourself back, you also have the ability to move yourself forward. And I think that it's just, we don't have the education. Most people just simply aren't aware of the power and the magic that they have inside of them. If they knew how to activate it, they would. But most of the time, people don't even realize that it's there.
Right, so I want to delve a little bit more deeply into a number of these. So I know one of the things you say is there are 3 steps people go through when creating breakthroughs in their lives. And this is important because we're talking about breakthroughs, we're talking about blocks, we're talking about beliefs that people have. So can you take us through this? What are the 3 steps that people go through in creating these breakthroughs?
Yes, great question. I see this all the time. So step 1 is resistance, step 2 is confusion, and step 3 is breakthrough. So step 1, resistance. Whenever we get new information, it often causes us to have to let go of the old information that we have, which messes with our need for certainty. And so even the best advice, people will hire coaches and still question whether they should follow through and doubt whether it's good advice and try to manipulate it. And so you'll see that whenever somebody wants to create a change, the first thing they do is they push back. Right? They'll say, I want to lose weight. But then the first thing they do is they go home, they get nervous that they signed up for a new weight loss program and they eat all the Christmas cookies. Right. And so resistance is the big one. And that really is just this underlying idea that somehow in some way it might not work out because you're going to find out what I already know, which is I'm not good enough to actually pull this off. And so that's where the resistance comes from. And then step 2 is confusion. So step 2 is you haven't quite bought all the way into the new belief, but you have finally started letting go of the old one. So it's kind of like you're in purgatory. So in Catholicism, they say you got heaven and hell, right? And in the middle is purgatory. And a lot of times people get out of hell, but they're not quite in heaven and they're just floating around in the middle. And what happens most of the time is they go back to hell because at least they know that it's warm. Right? They have a level of certainty that, they know what to expect. And so we tend to revert back into old habits.
Right.
And so what we need to do in those moments is lean in and continually be clear on what it is that you want and the pleasure that you're going to get from having it. And that allows you to keep moving forward. And then that's when the breakthrough occurs.
Okay. I like it. So one of the things you mentioned, let's kind of just step through that again. So resistance is the first step.
Yes.
So I see that in myself. I see that in people all the time. And it's almost natural because you're tied to these beliefs. You spent your whole life developing a particular belief.
Yeah.
And here you have new information that's counter this belief, but you're very attached to it. You're obviously going to resist it. So what are some things that we can do to kind of overcome that kind of first step of resistance?
So a lot of times, there's 2 steps. The first step is just get clear on what it is that you want. So many of us are so focused on what we don't want, what we don't have, what we're missing, what we're unhappy with, that when you ask people what they do want, they're like, I don't really know. Right? They're really clear on what they don't want, which is why they have it. Dr. Phil one time said, you got to name it to claim it. Right? And so I had a client come in one time and she said, Tim, I want you to help me to stop procrastinating. And I said, okay, great. What do you want? And she said, well, I want to stop putting things off. I said, yeah, I know, but what do you want to have happen instead? And she says, well, I want to quit being so unorganized. And all her brain was hearing is procrastinate, putting things off, being unorganized. It wasn't. And so that's all it could act on because that's all it ever heard. Right. What she really wanted was to feel motivated, driven, organized, passionate. So we've got to get clear on what we want. And when you gain clarity about what you want, how you want it to look, how you want to feel, how you want to behave, the pleasure that you're going to get from doing this, the pain that it's going to cause if you don't have this. When you start to create more clarity, and then you're using pleasure and pain in the right way, then all of a sudden your natural motivation, desire, passion, and focus is going to emerge. Most people don't have to be talked into doing something they enjoy. Right. And so if you are clear about what you want and you know it's going to create pleasure and you've associated pain to not having it, you're going to start moving forward unless there's a belief in the way. Right. And so I always focus on, all right, what do we want? We got to create clarity, what we call a well-formed outcome. And then we've got to figure out what are the beliefs that are either going to move you towards what you want or hold you back. And a simple question to ask yourself is, what would I have to believe in order to take action? What would I have to believe in order to feel the way that I want to feel? What would I have to believe? And when you start asking yourself the right questions, your brain will provide you with the answers and the insights. A lot of times we're not asking the right question. We're not asking what I call power questions. Instead, we're asking lousy questions. Lousy questions start with why?
Right.
Why can't I have this? What's wrong with me? Why don't things ever go well? Right? Why this? Why now? Why me?
Right. Right.
Right? Instead of what's one thing I can do right now to start moving forward? And as you and I both like, how can I make it fun?
Right.
Right.
Sure.
And what resources do I have? And who can I lean on for support? Right. And how will I know that I'm finally starting to make progress? You start asking questions like that and you gain clarity, then you suddenly start to feel like moving forward. And then you start taking action because you feel good and you're excited. And then that's when the momentum starts to happen.
I like it. There's a few things I want to reiterate in terms of what you said here. So the first one, and I like this a lot, is the concept of gaining clarity, because I tend to agree. People gain a lot of clarity on what they're doing wrong or what they don't want. And it's just you're focused on it and you're kind of drawn to what you're focused with. And you also mentioned people are comfortable with it. You know, and one of the things I heard long ago in terms of marriage and relationships is a lot of times people try to recreate, whether it's conscious or unconscious, what their life was like growing up, what their family situation, because they were comfortable with it. Mm-hmm. Whether it's dysfunctional, whether it's healthy, that doesn't matter as much as they knew it. So that I think this concept of really gaining clarity on what you do want versus what you don't want, really, really critical. And then you mentioned the beliefs. And one of the things I like about what you mentioned is it's not necessarily about asking questions, it's about asking the right questions.
Yes.
Because if you're asking the wrong questions, it's just going to bring you closer. It's going to reinforce a lot of these negative beliefs that you have.
Exactly right.
Or create this situation where, you know, as you mentioned, there's this resistance. So what you're doing is you're just reinforcing the resistance. I completely get that. And I like a lot of those concepts.
Yeah, good.
So one of the things I want to talk to you about, I know in your book, Get Out of Your Way, you say people are sabotaging themselves.
Yeah. Without
even knowing that they're doing so. Can you go a little bit more into what you mean by that and then what we can do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, there's a thing called self-deception, and self-deception is when we are helping to cause the problems that we are complaining about and we don't realize that we're doing it. Mm-hmm. It's like there's a small voice inside of us that's trying to guide us to do the right thing. And have you ever felt like you had this gut feeling that you should do something and then you didn't do it? And then afterwards you're like, oh, why didn't I listen to myself? Right. And often that is that part of us that's trying to cause us to move in the direction, but because of fear, you know, or because of programming from the past, experiences that have taught us that if you feel good about yourself, or you take care of yourself, or you act differently than everybody else, there's going to be consequences. And so, you know, we start to hold back and we push away or ignore that voice inside of us, that feeling inside of us that keeps urging us to move forward. And that's called self-sabotage. And when we do that, when we are self-deceived, then what happens is there's a couple of things that can happen. We can either start to make ourselves worse than we really are, or we can start to make the situation or others worse than they really are. Right. And so in either scenario, it causes us to associate pain to the goal. And whenever you associate pain to the goal, your brain is naturally going to try to push away from that situation. And I always tell people your biggest breakthroughs are hidden in the places you don't want to go. Because if you go there, then all of a sudden, one, you're going to have a breakthrough because you're going to have a new awareness, a new insight, a new perspective that you did not have before, which stretches your mind. It doesn't have to get you out of your comfort zone. It just can expand your comfort zone so you're more comfortable in bigger situations. And then the second thing you realize is that it wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be. Right? Because we always make it so much bigger. When we cast a shadow, the shadow is so much bigger than what it really is. And it's like the monster in the closet. You're so scared to go into that closet and your hands shaking, moving towards the doorknob. And then you finally, 1, 2, 3, and you throw the door open, you turn the light on, and there's nothing there. It's the buildup and the anticipation, you know, that causes us to feel so much anxiety. And we get into a pattern of stress and worry and fear so much that even thinking about doing something new fills us with adrenaline and cortisol, and we just start to really get into a bad habit more than anything else of not following through.
All right. I see this all the time. I see it myself. I see it in a lot of other people. One of the other areas I want to talk about is I know you created a course called Surviving to Thriving, and I want to get into that in a little bit. And in it, you mentioned the number one secret for creating inner peace and prosperity. That's what we started with. So what is this number one secret?
So again, the reason that I created this program is because people are constantly saying the same thing. You know, I want to feel more peaceful inside. I want to be more successful, right? Whether I wanted to make more money or I wanted to grow a business, or I'm in sales, or I'm a leader and working with a team. And how do I create more inner peace and prosperity? And I'd always have a bunch of things. And I found that if you give people a lot of stuff, they don't do anything with it because they get overwhelmed. So what you have to do is give them one thing and then another and then another. And these days, people want you to take them by the hand because there's nothing worse than feeling like you're stuck. Right. And so if you can have someone that'll take you by the hand and say, all right, let's do this step first, and then we're going to do step two. And so I put this program together called so that you can change your life in a week. And the Surviving to Thriving, I created 5 modules. So the first one's prosperity mindset. You've got to have the right mindset. And the number one secret that is what we really already talked about. The number one secret is self-love, right? Self-love. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are. And when you're loving and accepting yourself and you're getting rid of the judgment, then all of a sudden you don't have such a fear that other people are going to judge you harshly as well. The only reason that we feel that others are going to judge us is because we are judging ourselves. And when we judge ourselves in a loving, empowering, encouraging way, then all of a sudden we kind of assume that everybody else is going to do that too, which then gives you the courage to launch a new program or share something if you want to be an affiliate, or take that, ask for the sale, or just take that chance that you normally would not have taken because you were afraid of the rejection or the pushback or whatever. And so I focused on mindset. Then I focused on health and energy, because if you don't feel good and you don't have the energy, you're not going to follow through. And then money and relationships and inner peace.
All right. I like it. I love the concept of self-love. And I think it's something that's difficult for a lot of people in a lot of different situations.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things, I've had this conversation about forgiveness and, being able to forgive people. And the place to start is self-love, being able to forgive yourself also.
Yes.
And that's a critical component. So I know you have this full program that you mentioned. How can people get details if they want to find out what's the next steps? How do they enroll in this program? Where's more information for them?
So you can go to www.surviving2thriving.me, www.surviving2thriving.me. And then you have the ability to download my Mesmerizing Mindset Secrets checklist and another freebie that I gave you. And then I'm going to take you right to the opportunity to enroll in the Prosperity Mindset course. That course does the 2 things that we've been talking about today. It focuses on helping you to get clarity about what it is that you want. And then it helps you to upgrade your beliefs so that you're able to actually get it.
All right. And as you mentioned, these are really the critical 2 starting points for any change. Yeah.
If you don't do these 2 things, then your chances of getting what you want are slim to none, right? You got to have the right beliefs, and then you got to be clear on what you want. And then what I did was, in addition to giving you daily lessons every day for a week, so step 1, step 2, then I recorded them so you could listen to them while you're driving around. And then the third thing is I created a special prosperity mindset hypnosis audio program. I call it Brain Software. It's brand new, and let me get into that brain and train you for it. I've been doing this for 30 years, thousands and thousands of sessions. I know exactly what to do to retrain your mind so that you're able to follow through and feel excited and confident and relaxed now. Because like we talked about before we went live, David, the more fun you have, the more successful you are, because you attract opportunities, people, and situations into your life because you're having fun and you're sending out signals that I'm already peaceful. I don't need anything. I'm already good. And the universe, when it feels like you're already abundant, likes to give you more.
Absolutely. So let me give out the URL one more time. It's www.surviving2thriving.me. And when I say surviving to thriving, it's TO thriving. So www.surviving2thriving.me. And it sounds like you have a bonus available for folks. So for everybody, anybody wants to take a look definitely anybody who resonates some of these ideas that Tim's been sharing resonates with you, absolutely go to Surviving to Thriving, www.survivingtothriving.me. At least get the bonus to start. You can see the full program. And what I like about what you're doing also, and I get this a lot, is this concept that you need to take a step-by-step approach. So I see a lot of times people get overwhelmed. We need to do this. We need to take responsibility and set goals. We need to change our belief system. We need to, learn from our mistakes. We need, the list goes on and on of things that people are just overwhelmed with all these things that they need to do.
Yeah.
And what I like about what you're saying and what you've created here, it takes you a step at a time and relatively quickly. You're saying literally in a week, you're going to see change. The goal is to see change in a week.
Yes.
Which is very, very powerful. And the approach I get completely is pick one, stay laser focused on that, do one thing at a time till you complete that, then do the second thing till you complete that, and to the third thing, et cetera, et cetera. And would you say that's really the focus and core of why what you do works so well?
Yes, you said it beautifully, David. So it's kind of like you take a shovel and you go in your backyard and you're trying to hit oil, right? So you dig a 1-foot hole and you're like, oh, no oil there. So I'm going to start another hole. And then you dig another hole, oh, no oil there. And then by the end of the day, you've dug all these 1-foot holes. You're tired, you're sweaty, you're dirty, right? And you feel like you haven't accomplished anything.
Right.
What you want to do through this program is you take your shovel and you dig one hole and you dig all the way down until you hit oil. And that's what this program helps you do.
All right. I like that analogy. All right. We covered a lot today and you gave some very specific, tangible things for people to think about and do. I urge everybody to kind of check out what Tim's doing in terms of his program, check out the freebie, everything going on there. Before we finish up, any final thoughts or message for our listeners today?
Yeah, I talk a lot about self-love and I'm usually coaching high-powered business professionals, right? And so when they're wanting to make another $1 million or they're wanting to grow their power team or they're wanting to, quit their job so that they can be self-employed, you wouldn't think that your success coach is going to start talking about self-love. But that is what I have learned over the years, that if you're not taking care of yourself in that way, and a lot of times people feel uncomfortable even talking about that. And I think that's a big problem that we have in our world. If you have an issue with saying, I love myself and giving myself a big hug for whatever reason, that's an issue. And when you solve that, when you heal that up, then all the other things that you've been struggling to try to get are going to suddenly seem to fall into place for you. It really is like magic.
All right. I love that. I love that thought. All right. I want to wrap up. I want to thank you, Tim, for joining us today and providing some really solid nuggets and offering people an opportunity to really take the next step. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Thank you very much, David, and happy holidays to everyone who's listening.
Thank you. And once again, I'd like to thank everybody for listening, and I wish everybody great success in all areas of their life. We'll talk to everybody soon.